Just a personal aside. Some of you know me very well and know a lot about me. And those of you who do won't find it surprising when I say that what I had to say just before Mass was actually very hard for me and tied me up in all kinds of knots. I'm actually sweating from that. Sorry. Personal aside. You know, for the past couple of weeks, Deacon Bill and I have been focusing in on the question of discernment and vocation. And he said that it is last week he was saying that it is in the quiet where we learn to understand our vocation, whether it be to married life or to priesthood or religious life or diaconate or whatever it might be. God, in fact, calls each of us by name. And as I was listening last week and kind of thinking ahead to my homily for this week, I was thinking, how do we spend time listening? What does that look like? You know, when I first started in religious life, and we would sit down, we always had an hour of meditation first thing in the morning. First of all, I don't do anything intelligent first thing in the morning. You know, my Mass at Palma in the morning, we're barely lucky that it's valid. You know, I haven't had 3 cups of coffee yet, so the blood isn't flowing. But we would sit down for meditation at 5:30 in the morning, and I was usually asleep by 5:35. But later on, as time went on, and I became more involved with the practice of meditation, listening to the voice of God, I used to ask myself, God, are you a part of this conversation, or am I just talking to myself? Are you listening? Are you talking to me? If we're going to be listening to God, what's he sound like? What's she sound like? What does God sound like in your mind? And is it just me talking to me? The ancient practice of listening to the voice of God has been a fundamental aspect of almost every spirituality, not only in the Catholic or in the Christian churches, but in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in so many. The ability to quiet ourselves, to listen to the divine voice. How do we do that? There is a practice that I've recommended to other people, one that I don't use every day, but I use it frequently, of Lectio Divina, where I very often need a voice that speaks to me. And to just take the scripture of the day or of Sunday and slowly read it. Now, if you're like me, when you sit down, I've read the scriptures a few times in my life. And so I get through the first verse or the first phrase. I say, oh, I know what the rest of this is. And my mind just trots off down the road. Let's stop. Pull that horse in. And read each word. Even if you have to point to each word slowly. Read each word of the reading. And then do it again. Only this time begin to picture in your mind what this is like. Take today's gospel. You know, where is Jesus? He's at the Last Supper. What's going on? Who are the people, or the disciples? The 12 apostles are there. Probably a couple of waiters in the background. Somebody's cleaning up the dishes. Maybe a little clatter going on as they're moving dishes in and out. What do you hear? What do you smell? And then go back slowly and read it again. And put yourself into the picture. Who's talking about things? You know, Judas is over here. He's getting ready to go give the priests in the temple 30 pieces of silver. Peter's over here wondering, what's he talking about? And they're all reclining on little couches. You know, maybe take, you know, Da Vinci's picture of the Last Supper. Maybe take some other photo that you've seen, image that you've seen. And put yourself in there. Kind of wedge yourself in at the table. What do you hear? And then maybe do a little reading along the way. Put it away for the day, come back to it another day, and maybe you've read a little something. What are you thinking more? What do you hear? There's plenty of literature that's published on Lectio Divina. that will literally walk you through step by step. And take your time. We're always in a hurry someplace. We're always going someplace quickly. Prayer isn't something that we do quickly. Not this kind of prayer. It's something that we take our time with. It's something that we reflect on. To hear the voice of God as he speaks in the events of our life, in this time and in this place. To understand our vocation, we need to understand the voice of God as he calls us. There's a priest out of Boston College, Father Michael Himes, who runs a program for college and university-age students called Intersections. And it's all about discerning your life call. How do you know what you want to be when you grow up? You know, and it gets more complicated these days, doesn't it? You know, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a fireman. And then when I said, no, that's too dangerous, I'll be a cowboy instead. A lot more fun. Look at me. You know, big difference. We change our mind. Life has gotten complicated. And he says there are three things that help us to understand. And this is what we pray about. And he spends a lot of time, but it boils down to what he calls three key questions. First, what is the source of your joy? What gives you joy in your life? Not just makes you happy. You know, because sometimes there are days we're not real happy. But the source of our joy, is it relationships? Is it serving other people? Is it somehow or another sharing the truth? See, for an educator, seeing the light of understanding going on in the eyes of their students. What is it that brings you joy? The second is, are you any good at it? Can you do this? Can you find, are you pretty good at what you want to do? What you find joy at? And third, does anybody else want you to do it? Now he uses an absurd example. He says, what gives you joy? I love being a shepherd. You know, I love moving the sheep around and having the sheep hear my voice and answer and follow me. Just knowing that I can protect these sheep, that brings me joy. Are you any good at it? Haven't lost a sheep in 5 years. Does anybody else want you to do it? Well, I live in downtown Brooklyn, and not a lot of people are happy about the sheep in my apartment. You know, there's a lot of location that's involved. But what is it that genuinely gives you joy? Not just happy, joy. And spend time expanding on that. What does that mean in my life? What does that look like in my life? What does that feel like in my life? Pray that through as you move through the scriptures. Pray that through. Are you any good at it? It may make you really happy to be a baker, but you've burned every loaf you've tried so far. Probably not going to work. But it could be that you're really good. You volunteered as a catechist a few times, and you loved it, and the kids loved you. There might be a connection there. Does anyone want you to do it? Do you constantly get asked to volunteer for the same kinds of things? Do you constantly want to volunteer for the same kinds of things? Do you feel yourself drawn to certain things? And people are really happy. Oh, good, you're here. We needed somebody like you. Those three key questions. Dig into those. What is the source of your joy? Are you any good at it? And does anybody else want you to do it? Think on those, pray on those, and within it, hear the voice of God calling you into a deeper relationship. That's the heart of your vocation. That is what will give you meaning, purpose, and direction in life.